the surface. The most important day is the day you figure your purpose. You into it, the universe, so you working. Cause shit hit different when it's perfectly perfect. Blunt hit different when it's perfectly perfect. Keep the grass, cause stay away from them circles. You into it, the universe, so you working. Cause shit hit different when it's perfectly perfect. Scratch the surface. The most important day is the day you figure your purpose. You into it, the universe, so you working. Cause shit hit different when it's perfectly perfect. The blunt hit different when it's perfectly perfect. Keep the grass, cause stay away from them circles. You into it, the universe, so you working. Cause shit hit different when it's perfectly perfect.
A well-organized lie defeats a disorganized truth every time. Woo-hoo-wee, man. Y'all already know what it is, man. It's Bobby Banger in the house. Look, and I'm coming to do what I got to do, and I'm going to do what I got to do. I'm standing tall. I'm standing strong. Look, man, look. Pseudo killers on deck. What's good, family, man? Look. Man, we had a powerful interview, man, with Dr. Farrah, man. And he did a great job. Waiting for the rest of the bros to hit that link, man. I don't know where they at. They moving slow. But we definitely want to premiere this portion of the interview on there, man. It was a great interview. The physicist did his job, man. So we want to always make sure that we're a part of bringing content to the community that you normally would not get. And so give me a couple minutes, man, to settle in. And the pseudo killers at the movies, man, y'all know what it is. And we top notch with it. And we enjoying what we got to do, man. So give me a couple seconds to see where all the brothers at, man. And we definitely going to go ahead and premiere that. It was a great interview, as a matter of fact. It went well. And I think we had some questions that we needed answered. And he actually came through for us. So, you know, Dr. Duncan Farrah, man, we're going to go ahead and put that in there and get that straight. I wanted to try to find a flyer on, if I could let me try to get this, show y'all the flyer. 1 second, man, let me get this. Share the screen on that so you can actually see the flyer, man. And yeah, we just really appreciated just having an expert on, because, you know, we had these conversations about experts and what experts do and why the experts are important. And we talk about how our community seems to be allergic to the experts. And when I say our community, I'm talking about the community that's almost smart. Just smart enough not to know when you're wrong. You know, as you transition from one position of thought to the next, you have to be smart enough to get that straight. Because if you're not going to know enough to know you're wrong. All right, so let me share the screen real quick before we get in. I don't know where everybody at. You know, they can't handle that late thing. That late night be killing them. But it is what it is, man. I want the people to get up in the building. We got 29,000 in the building, man. Where y'all at? Let y'all come in. You know, we're not even starting till we get 50,000 in the building. So, Dr. Duncan, he's a physicist in the Department of Physics and Astronomy. Shout out to Brother Anthony, Space Age African. He's the lead teacher in the Space Age African Astronomy Club. Big up to you, man. He was in the building, man. So Dr. Duncan, he works at the University of Hawaii at Mano. He's a physicist. And I think it's important. He's on the faculty. And it's just important to actually bring experts to talk about said subjects. This is how the game is played at the highest level. This is the level. Shout out to Dr. Oyamayat. She plays the game at the highest level. She's leveled up. And I'm trying to figure out how our community had gotten to this space that talked down to the level. I don't know. Why was this occurring? Why did this happen? Shout out to Jalen and Jalen. That's Jalen Blackwell and Jalen Murray. Shout out to them. You know, they did their presentation on Dr. Oyamayat's show. And it was a great presentation, man. Y'all go back and get that download. It was great. Jalen and Jalen, you know, Jalen is her son, and then the other Jalen is her son's friend. And we did an interview with them brothers. And I think they 13 or 14, young. And they was, you know, just dealing with, I think, let me see, the robust network of preventing cybersecurity attacks. And they did a whole presentation on it, and they set up a network. This is the level. Those two brothers are leveled up. And so we want to make sure we always bring y'all to level, because y'all deserve that content, man. Y'all deserve to be able to reach out and touch the experts. And this is what I've always wanted to make sure I brought. You know, we talk that talk and we walk that walk. Appreciate all the supporters in the Pseudo Killers, man. We got a Cash App early in the game. Appreciate that, man. Definitely put it to good use. Let me see. 1 second. Julian, man, look, I appreciate that, man. That ain't nothing but love right there. That's good looking, yo. Appreciate it. All the way. And we appreciate the support that we getting from the community, and we appreciating the ability, based off your support, to put the high-level real conversations. We're not talking about the high-level pseudo conversations, but the high-level real conversations, because we leveled up at PK. So I'm gonna give y'all a couple more minutes to get in the building, man, and sit back and enjoy that. Man, I see the stars and came out tonight. Tuck Mayat, he be in the server. What it do? What it do? What it do? We got official Pseudo Killers in the building. Miss Tiffany, what it do? What it do? What it do? We got Sister Mika. What it do? What it do? Mr. Metro, what it do? John J. Commodore, what it do? Rock City, New York, what it do? J. Cal, you know what it is. Cameron, we see you. Nady, what's up? Jason Northcutt, what's going on? Judas Redemption, I see you. A6, Omar Reed, Julian Hunt Billion, Star Studded. Supporters are in the building. I see you, Master. What's good with you? numbers drive a little bit, man, so we can get right into this, man. It was a great interview. This is a portion of the interview. We was asking the question, how do we know the size of the universe? Man. And the professor went in. He was very cordial. He was very sophisticated in his approach to answering our questions. He was kind of worried about, well, I don't want to, I don't want to ramble on. I say, man, in this community, they ramble on about anything. So your high level rambling will definitely be warranted. And he just got real comfortable in this interview, and he did it trying to wait to see where everybody at. Yeah, man, they playing, man. Where they at? I ain't gonna let them off the hook today. I know I'm letting them off the hook. I'm not gonna let them off the hook. They moving slow. Gary Hart, I see you. JJ 7000, I see you. Per Black, I see you. Look, y'all know we got some events coming too, man. Got some great events coming. Let's pull this up right here. Y'all seen the flyer? Let me see if I can put the flyer back up here. And y'all just gotta support us, man. I mean, look, it ain't hard. So, right here. Okay. I'm gonna ban out the way real fast. The ticker. So, yes, we got that live interview with Dr. Moya McTeer. Tickets is $25. Zoom pay-per-view. Now, she wrote this great book, The Milky Way, the autobiography of our Milky Way. I'm listening to it right now. Y'all go purchase that book. I think it's in Barnes and Nobles, and it's definitely on Audible. Tickets $25, man. They going fast, man. Make sure you're in the building, man. And shout out to the supporters that donated. Okay? And they will be in the building. Think damn near the whole server actually donated, and they will definitely be getting those tickets. So it's a live interview June 15th at 7:30. Be in the building, man. Be there early. We doing it. Okay? We want to hear the sister put it together, right? You know we're going to ask her those pseudo killer questions. We're going to get straight to it. So make sure y'all support this event. All right? So this is a powerful month for the sisterhood. Okay? Powerful month. Then we also got that debate coming up with the two sisters, man. Y'all make sure y'all joining that. That's going to be a good one too. So it's important to actually support, one, the experts, two, the sisterhood that are experts, and then three, support the sisters who throwing their hat in the ring in this debate. And you know that's happening on Sarnetta TV. So this right here is the Pseudo Killers event with Dr. Moya McTeer, June 15th. Need y'all to come through. Just get your tickets, man. It's gonna be powerful. And you know, we just appreciate the support any way we can do it. All right. And then I want to make sure, hold on, let me get this. All right, before we, I gotta be careful what I say out my mouth today. And also, I want to make sure, oh man, stupid. Let me see. All right, let me get this out the screen for a minute. All right. Yeah, but get that. If y'all ain't get y'all tickets, y'all playing, man. Come on now. All right. Stop playing. Get a chance to dive in with an expert. The event is going to be powerful, and y'all already know it. So I also want to share the screen and go ahead and plug this event that's going to be happening on Sarnetta TV. Fast. This debate right here between is Kemetic priesthood, the prototype of the Levitical priesthood. That's going down on June 24th, 7 p.m. That's $25. So if y'all spend $50 this month, y'all doing y'all thing already. And it's welcome to the big leagues, man. The House of Consciousness, Sarnetta production. All right. That's Sister Christina and Sister Nepal. All right. Y'all make sure y'all be there. It's going to be a live conversation. It's the inaugural event for having these two sisters do what they do. About 35 people waiting for 40 to get in the building, man, so we can do that. So, yeah, I think our the level of our content is getting to where I wanted to be at. And it's always been a vision of mine to make sure that y'all get the content that I be really checking out. Early on, as I became aware of the natural world, I started contacting the experts. Shout out to Sirius B. All right. Man, he's in contact with a lot of experts you're seeing on this channel. And it's based off of his education. All right. That's why it's important to promote education, because it will bring you around people that you will later on be able to use in life. You develop friendships in higher education that you will use as you build your business or as you get a job. See, we're not allergic to getting jobs, and we're not allergic to starting businesses. Okay, we do these things because at the end of the day, it's about food, clothing, and shelter and protection of yourself. We're not afraid to succeed and be successful. So the PK family is always striving to change the dynamic of the marginalized communities and making sure we bring them that good high-level content. This I am sure of. So let me put it in queue. Without further ado, hold on, I'm gonna try one more time. It's not gonna happen. Hey, JJ, that's not gonna happen. Yeah, okay. Yeah, man. See, in the chat, JJ400, like you wilding out. And that's the issue right there, man. It's fear, right? Don't live in fear of a person because of their skin color. Don't do it. I'm going to say this again. Do not live in fear of another human being based off of their skin color. We talk about the biological reason for skin color, and it has nothing to do with misinformation that was kicked off during scientific racism. They was wrong, and they was teaching pseudoscience. Race is a social construct. And in 1950, UNESCO published a statement. They actually published 4 statements. I think the last one was in, 1974, 1973, somewhere along the lines of that. Okay? So in the scientific world, race is a social construct. In the natural world, race was socially constructed by those who disrespected the human race and judged people off of their skin color. PK, we don't judge you off your skin color. We judge you off the merit of your information. And we are clearly aware of the history of Black Americans being brought to the Americas. We're the whole thing. And we're clear on our stance on it. That's why we fight so hard for education. And we're clear of cleaning up the streets in North America. We're clear with this. And we understand that 80% of juveniles in juvenile detention, 80% of them are illiterate. 80%, just think about that. If we could shave that down to half, how would the numbers drop? And we know as people get educated, they do less time in jail and don't return. And even if you go to jail based off of being illiterate, when you get in jail and you get literate, because it's time in there for you, right? Most of those people don't even return. Did you know that? And so we play a prominent role in making sure we educate not only the Black community, but the human community. This is important. Going forward, you got to be able to do it. See, first of all, you got to fix home. Because if you don't fix home, you can't fix nothing. And if you don't fix outside of home, then the thing that's outside is going to come in your home. And if you don't fix what's outside of your home and then fix what's outside of your community, then what's outside of your community is going to infect your community and it's going to end up in your home. So we don't play with this thing right here. We gets to it all the way. So we want to make sure we do the right thing. You know, they say always do the right thing, man. Man, get JJ out of here, man. He disrespectful to the education of our people. Disrespectful. All right, let me set up the and let me hold on. Oh, 1 sec, man. Let me do that. All right. I'll make sure I get the sound right on this. I'm always playing with this halfway. All right. Hope I think we should be good. Oh. Get over here like this. Ladies and gentlemen, this was like the fourth question for Dr. Farrah. The size and age of the universe. Watch how we start to get in to the ancient cultures, man. This was good. All right. Hold on, let me make sure I got the sound right on it. With no mishaps. I got the sound shared. All right. Click. Ladies and gentlemen, man, look, it was a great interview, man. Pseudo killers at the movies. Bring to you Dr. Farrah.
Yeah, Dr. Farrah, we have a conversation. We have conversations on the pseudo killers a lot about, how vast the universe is, and we get a lot of questions like, well, how y'all know? How do y'all know that universe is such and such size and what's the age of it. So could you explain what methods do we use to calculate the age and size of the universe? And unobservable universe, if we can calculate the size of that.
Okay, anyway, hey, hi Ken, it's nice to meet you, and you just asked a very, very good and very difficult question. I will do my best with it. That I will try and avoid getting very technical here but I'll do my best. Okay, so let's take the age of the universe first. There are various ways to estimate the age of the universe, and the short answer to your question is we use all of them to try and work out how old the universe is. The first experiments to do this were done 100 plus years ago, and they didn't really have access to anything outside the Earth. There were telescopes. The first telescopes were invented, 300 and something, when was Galileo, 350 odd years ago? But they weren't terribly good. And so the first truly decent telescopes were about 100 years ago. So prior to that, we had to make do with what we had on Earth. And back then, there was still this question, how old is the universe? And scientists back then said, well, we can't measure the ages of other stars. And we can now. I'll come back to that. But what we can do is find the oldest thing that we can on planet Earth, and then say the age of the universe is at least as old as this thing on Earth. Because if the Earth is this old, the universe has got to be at least that old. It's probably got to be quite a bit older. And the way that's done, and here I'm going to try and talk about something I don't really know much about, so that any of you might know more about this than me, so if I say something incorrect, please correct me. But my understanding of that is that what you do is you look for very old rocks, and then you use a technique called radiocarbon dating, where you measure how much of a certain type of carbon atom is in the rock, so a thing called an isotope. And isotopes of an element are where the atom is basically the same, but you have one extra particle in the nucleus of that atom, which makes it a little bit heavier, but also makes it radioactive. And that radioactivity means it's going to eventually decay into its more normal counterpart. And so what you can do is you can look at that rock and you can say how much of the heavier isotope compared to the normal carbon is in that rock. And that ratio lets you estimate an age. And that's a pretty well-established method. It's been calibrated against other methods of age dating things. If my hazy memory serves, the oldest rocks that we have found on Earth are, would you believe, in Canada. And I think they're found in a place called Acasta. And I'm not going to try and pronounce the name of them. I think they're spelled Gneisses, which I think is Gneisses, something like that. Those rocks are age dated to about 4 billion years old. And so immediately you kind of know, well, okay, the Earth has got to be like 4.5 billion years old. Therefore, the universe has got to be older than that. Then the next thing that came along was a better understanding of how stars work. Because what you can do is, on a basic level, you can go outside during the day and you can look at our sun. Obviously, please don't look directly at the sun, but you can go outside and you can look at the sun and you can say, hey, you know what? The sun looks really similar now to what it looked like a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, 100 years ago. The sun has basically always looked the same. It's a stable object. And then you can go a step further with that. And you can say, well, the sun is providing all the heat and light we have. And so for life on Earth to have evolved, the sun needed to be pretty stable. Mm-hmm. And so you can then kind of immediately say, well, hang on, how old is the sun? And there are various ways of doing that. This is where, we would be here for hours to explain the details of this. It gets a little technical, but it's actually the concept of it is kind of straightforward. The way that the sun shines is by a process called thermonuclear fusion, where light elements fuse together to produce heavier elements, and that process releases quite a bit of energy. And so what happens inside the sun is you have a lot of hydrogen atoms are fusing together to form helium atoms, and that process gives out energy. So what you can do is you can look at the sun and you can estimate how heavy it is. And from that, you can get an idea of how much hydrogen is in it. And from that, you can say, okay, how long can the sun have been shining in the way that it has? You sort of say, it needs this much hydrogen, this much hydrogen and helium now. Let's say it started off mostly hydrogen. How old must it be? You're kind of doing that kind of like, if you see it like this now, and it must have originally been like this, how long has it been around for to convert hydrogen to helium at that rate? And if you do that calculation, you get an age of about 4.5 billion years. But that's just for our sun. The next thing you do, I did tell you this was a very good, but very complicated question. The next thing you do is you say, well, okay, that's our sun, but there's lots of other stars. Like, the age of the universe has got to be at least as old as the oldest star we can find anywhere. And so what scientists did was they spent quite a bit of time working out how to measure the age of our sun. And then they thought, okay, well, that's great, but we can apply the same method to other stars, because you can see lots of stars in the sky. And so you can go to all those other stars and say, well, how old is this star? How old is this star? And if you do that, then you get this huge range in ages. The youngest stars that we can see are something like 1 million years old, which in astronomical terms, that star is a baby. Like, it's just been born. It's a screaming infant for all practical purposes. But the oldest stars that we have ever found are about 12.5 billion years old. And those stars are they tend to be, well, actually they can vary in size quite a bit, but they tend to be quite dim. They tend to be not doing anything exciting. They're just sitting there steadily, gently glowing. But they are very old, 12.5 billion years. And so from that, you can immediately say, okay, the oldest star is 12.5 billion years old. The universe has got to be older than that, because you've got to have a universe before you have stars. The next thing, the last thing you can do, and this one this one gets a little weird, but this is actually ultimately the way we measure an age of the universe itself rather than an age of things in the universe. And that's to do the following. Back in 1930, different scientists all over the world realized that galaxies weren't staying still relative to each other. They're all moving apart from each other. It's a relationship called Hubble's law. And so if you look at a distant galaxy, that galaxy is by and large going to be moving away from our galaxy. And if you look at all the other galaxies, they're all doing that. And Hubble's law gets very, very mysterious and non-intuitive. We can come back to it if you guys want. But what you can do is you can say, okay, wait a minute, I can use this to measure an age, because what you can say is, if everything is moving away from everything else, then everything must have started out in the same place. And so what you can do is you can say, let's take the rate at which everything is moving away from everything else. And then you can kind of imagine that you are winding back that clock. And you can say, well, if everything's moving away, how long ago must everything have been together in the same place? And that gives you an age for the whole universe. And if you do that, you get an age of about 13.7 billion years.
Quick.
Okay, that was age. I can pause there. or would you like to hear the distance as well?
Oh yeah, but let me ask you this real fast. Did you talk about uranium 238 that decays to lead 206? Did you talk about that? Did I miss that?
I didn't mention that one explicitly. I believe that one is used.
Yes.
I think carbon is the more popular way of doing isotopic dating, but I believe that uranium-238 decay to lead, I can't remember how the decay chain goes. It's uranium-238, and then I think it goes to 235, and then it goes to lead 220 something. I got my memories going.
I would say 206, but don't get me started. As strong as 2 left feet. I know it's 4 point. The half life is 2.5 billion years. I kind of remember that, but yeah.
I think that sounds right to me too. But yes, you're absolutely right. I think that can be used as well.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
What else was it, Ken?
Yeah, that answer is sort of like unpacking a Russian doll a bit, right? But that was, but you covered so many things. These are actually topics that we've discussed, right? Each one of those, I think, to some extent, with our community. So that was an outstanding sort of breakdown.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah. Okay. Well, let me try and briefly cover the distance question, because this is actually a similar thing in concept. So, measuring a distance in the universe is shockingly difficult. It's far harder than you would ever imagine it was from just like reading like in Scientific American and so forth. And the reason for that is, I don't know, you might have heard of the term redshift, and redshift is often kind of used to kind of say how far away something is, but that actually isn't what redshift is. Redshift is how fast something is moving away from us, not how far away from it is something is from us. If you want to measure how far something away from us is, then you have to be rather careful, because the methods that we have for measuring distances all only work in certain very specific ways. And so what you have to do is you have to use very reliable ways, which only work at short distances, to work out how less reliable ways work, which let you go to bigger distances, and then use those less reliable ways that work at bigger distances to calibrate even less reliable ways, which may work at enormous distances. And the overall method is called the cosmological distance ladder, where you use the well-understood thing to understand the slightly less well-understood but much bigger range method, which you then use again to understand the largest range methods. To run through it, at short distances, by short, this is astronomy, right? So short means within our galaxy, which is still a hell of a long way.
Right.
The method that's used is called parallax, and parallax is kind of like this, in some senses, the easiest to understand. The way that a parallax distance works can actually be understood by doing an experiment just like literally in your backyard or wherever you can like see a long way. And that is that if you look at something that's like a moderate distance away, like a tree or like a mountaintop or a building or something, and you look at that building and then you say to yourself, okay, that's cool, but what do I see behind it? And that what you might see behind the tree is like a mountain or a forest, or you might see a building, and then behind it you might see a whole bunch of other buildings. But what you then do, if you want to measure the distance to that building or that tree, is you go from your starting point and then you move over some distance, not towards the object, but you kind of move in a straight line that's like parallel to it. And then what you do is you look at what's behind it. And if that object is relatively close to you, then what you'll see behind it will change, because you're changing the direction that you're looking at it. So, for example, I'm trying to think of an example of this. Like, let's say you're at a cross street and you look across the street and you see the light, so you see a red light, and you look behind that red light, you might see the street going away, away ahead of you. But if you like cross the road perpendicular to that light and then look at that light again, behind that light, you're going to see a building. And so what you can do is you can calculate, you know how far you moved. And then by looking at what's behind the object as you move, you can calculate the angle at the top of the triangle that forms, your starting point, your ending point, and where the object you're looking at is. And you can take those two measurements, the distance you move and that angle, and you can use trigonometry to work out how far away that object is. That, as I said, is called parallax distances, and they're the most reliable method we have. And the way that you do those to do distances in astronomy is you say in, January, you observe from the Earth the object that you want to measure the distance to. And then what you do is you wait 6 months and you wait for the Earth to go halfway around its orbit so that it's now on the other side of the sun. And then you look at that same object and you see what's behind it now. And you use that set of information to calculate the angle through which it's moved on the sky. You know the distance the Earth has traveled because it's like half an orbit. And you can use those two measurements to calculate a distance. Those distances work pretty well. And the next rung in the ladder are what are called luminosity distances. And the way these work is a little different. The way this works is nothing to do with parallax. What you do, I'll give you the synopsis of it and then I'll give you an example. What you do is you find yourself an object far away in the universe and you measure how bright it appears to be. And then you measure some property of that object which tells you how bright it actually is. And then you take those two numbers, how bright it actually is and how bright it appears to be, and the ratio of those gives you an estimate of how far away it really actually is. So I'll give you an example because this one's kind of a weird one. Let's say you're looking out of a window in your house, and you look way down the street, and it's nighttime, and you look in the window of another house, and in the room that you're looking into, there's a light bulb on the ceiling. So, this sounds kind of weird, but bear with me. So let's say you get yourself a pair of binoculars and you look down the street and you look into someone else's house and you look at a light bulb in their house. And the first thing you do is you measure how bright that light bulb looks to you. And it's a long way away, so it's going to be kind of dim. But what you then do is you zoom right in on that light bulb until you can read the letters on it. And the letters on light bulbs tell you how bright it actually is. They'll say things like 60 watt or 100 watt bulbs, that sort of thing. Right. So you zoom in until you can read that. And then what you've got are two bits of information. You've got how bright it looks to you from your position way down the street. And then you've got a measurement of how bright it actually is by looking at the letters on the bulb. And you can use the ratio of those two numbers to work out how far away that bulb is, because the further away you are, the dimmer it's going to look. It sounds crazy in some ways, but it's exactly that method that astronomers use.
Right, the math works.
Oh, sorry, it's the question.
I was just saying the math works.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's some subtleties to it, but the math works really, really well. And so there's two primary types of objects in the universe you can do this with. The first is a special, or not special, a kind of an unusual kind of star. And that star is called a Cepheid variable. And a Cepheid variable is a star that pulsates. It gets bigger and smaller. And when it gets bigger, it gets dimmer. And when it gets smaller, it gets brighter. And astronomers discovered probably 50, 60 years ago that there's a relationship between how bright the Cepheid is and how it pulsates. So what you can do is you can go to a telescope and you can measure the frequency at which it brightens and dims and brightens and dims. You measure how quickly that happens. And then there's a relationship that you can use to calculate how bright it is from that frequency. That works up to distances of the nearest galaxies. But to get really far out into the universe, you need a much, much brighter object than that. And for that, astronomers use supernovae. And in particular, they use a type of supernova called a type 1a supernovae. And it would take a while to get into what that is, but the basic idea is you have a big star and you've got a little star called a white dwarf orbiting with that big star, and some material gets like drawn off the big star and onto the white dwarf, and eventually enough of that happens that the white dwarf explodes. And you can see those supernovae to huge distances, like halfway across the universe and beyond. And there is a relationship between the way in which the light from one of those supernovae dims. So they start off, they really quickly get very, very bright. And then over the course of days or weeks, they dim. They get slowly dimmer from their maximum brightness. And there's a relationship between how fast they dim and how bright they are at their maximum. So if they dim really quickly, then they weren't very bright to begin with. But if they dim quite slowly, it takes them weeks to months to get dimmer, that means that at their peak, they were really bright. And so what you can do is you can measure how long it takes that supernovae to get dimmer and dimmer and dimmer over the course of days and weeks. That then tells you how bright it really was. Then you can, again, take the same data and say, well, how bright did it appear to be? And the ratio of those numbers gives you a distance. That's probably the best, or not the best, the distance indicator that goes the furthest. But it's critically dependent on being calibrated on things like parallax distances. They all kind of go together in a chain.
Right.
If you use all of those methods together, then the distance to the edge of the observable universe is something like 90 billion light years. Give or take a few billion light years, but it's about 90 billion.
Okay.
You know what's one of the interesting things we always say in one of our famous phrases is that in science you can't skip steps, right? So we had to master those steps in terms of the parallax and being able to measure the distance from the Earth to the sun first, and then he sort of mentioned the whole idea of measuring the luminosity and then measuring the distant galaxies, and then building on all of that information we have. And then now we can measure the distances to the very farthest things inside of the cosmos, which again, right, it sort of backs up that whole idea. You can't skip steps, right?
Oh yeah, that's an absolutely brilliant analogy. It's perfect. I mean, there's so much in many popular science articles, they kind of portray scientific progress as being this big giant leap where scientists just magically do this big experiments and it all works. And the reality is never like that. The reality is it's always this slow, careful, methodical progress. And the distances in astronomy are a perfect example of that. We spent decades working out how to do parallax, then decades working out how to do Cepheids, then a decade or two working out how to use supernovae. It took a long time. So yeah, that's a perfect analogy.
Yeah, Brendan, we always say that those ancient cultures, we do them a disservice when we try to make them skip the steps and know everything that we know. That's, we talk about that. That's very, very disrespectful to those ancient cultures that did what they could do to kind of move humanity forward. Yep, I appreciate that answer right there.
Well, yeah, you're totally right. I mean, I don't know much about this, but I I try to read about what cultures across history achieved, and I'm always just like astounded by what they did. Like they did what they needed to do to kind of survive and be sort of peaceful and prosperous. And compared to today, they might not have done as much as like modern civilizations had. But what they did was like incredible, and they didn't skip steps. They were methodical, they were careful, they were like and so much of modern science is based on what they did.
Well, you just hit a home run.
Yeah, that was excellent.
All right, man. Yeah. So that was a great portion of the interview. And he talked about steps. So when we said it, everybody looked at us like we was crazy. And so what we was giving you a measuring stick to see how most of these people in the community were actually disrespecting you by making up things and putting things on the ancient world. The pseudos do that. The pseudos do that. Now, this professor, like Tony Tone said, this guy, his PhD is from Imperial College, one of London's most elite universities. And he's telling you that the ancient cultures, too, had to take steps. Yeah, you got to get to one thing, you got to get to another when understanding nature. If you don't understand biology, you're not going to understand evolution. If you don't understand the anatomy of a human being, you're not going to be able to begin to fix the body. You don't just start fixing the body. When it breaks, you need to put it back together again. You have to understand anatomy. For the longest time, they didn't know where blood came from or how it moved through the body. They just didn't know. See, these are the things you learn when you really start to study for real. You get that. Right? And you'll hear people say and talk about how the ancient cultures had spaceships and they flew, they did all that. But man, they didn't even have the invention of asphalt yet. So even if they had the plane, where was it going to land it at? And then you got to have a need for these things. Like, why would you need concrete or asphalt? Wouldn't even have rubber wheels. You need to be able to land the plane with the wheels. Steps. And these steps started when Homo sapiens sapiens took their first steps in trying to observe and understand the natural world. So at PK, when it comes to the conscious community, we're at the frontier. So you will get interviews and you will get things, you will hear information that you're just not familiar with. It's going to make you scratch your mind. Scratch your mind. Can't scratch your mind. Scratch your brain. Scratch your head. Like, huh? Remember, science is counterintuitive on all levels. Your five senses aren't very good at measuring the size and shape of the universe, let alone the earth. That's why we had these conversations about flat earth. It's counterintuitive. You don't feel the earth actually moving. So intuitively, you say it's not. You can't see the curvature standing on earth. So you just say, oh man, it must be flat. You don't see human beings evolve over time for millions of years. Humans have a lifespan of about 70 to 80 years, not long enough for you to see humans evolve. Now, there's insects like certain lizards that evolve rapid evolution. Look that up. And there's Charles Darwin's finches that they actually seen the evolution. So, I'm glad we could bring this portion of the interview. Look out for that. Let me put back up the banner, okay, for these events that we're actually having this month. Man, it's the month of the high-level thinkers. I want to make sure that y'all respect the process of taking steps. So Dr. Moya McTeer, She wrote the work, an autobiography of our galaxy, the Milky Way. And she tells it from a perspective of the Milky Way. So it's the Milky Way actually narrating the daggone story. And it's very interesting. And she talks about philosophers, and she talks about what they think, and she talks about scientists. And man, it's a powerful book. So y'all get that book and check that out. That's a recommendation from Brother Unc. I'm recommending this. So as you spend your time talking crazy in the chat because of your limited study habits, go to school. You know you can find this information in the secret vault called the library. We rely on the experts because the experts have expertise in this subject. So while you're spending 20 minutes of reading or 2-3 hours of reading after you came home for work, these experts are in the lab all day, every day. And so, you know, we appreciate everybody coming through, man, the Pseudo Killers at the Movie. From time to time, we'll release portions of interviews. It is an important step for us to be able to do these things and bring this type of information to the community, man. We want to make sure we keep doing it because it's important, man. Hey, make sure y'all go ahead and support the debates that's coming up. Powerful debate with the two sisters. We want to make sure that we support that on the highest levels. It's Bobby Banger, man. We sitting here, we relaxing and we chilling, man, and we enjoying everything, man. Shout out to the community of skeptics. Shout out to all the people that's showing love, man. Shout out to Sister Christina and Sister Nepal. It's going down. Welcome to the big leagues, to the House of Consciousness. That's where that debate is taking place. Sarnetta TV Productions, man. Go get them tickets, man. This is going to be a powerful month, man, of bringing information that's important for you to understand where you at, man. Hey, look, this was one of these interviews, man. PK interviews, the experts. We're going to be doing a lot of that, man. Caught y'all by surprise, huh? The stars came out tonight, man. They was all in the building. We had the haters, but we ain't mad at the haters. If you ain't got nobody hating, you ain't trying hard enough. The Irvin, man, I see you. Juju, Pseudo Killer Supreme. Mr. Metro, Tony Tone. Abjuware, man, support the Abjuware store. CK, Pseudo Killer Official. Miss Tiffany, due diligence, man. Y'all know what it is, man. Master, I see you. I see you, man. Yeah, this is how we doing it, man. Appreciate everybody that came through, man. It's love, man. The Center for the Study of Pseudoisms, Pseudo Killers on deck, man. As we slide on out, man, you sit back, man, with the cool vibes, man. Stay in tune with the universe, man, because it's natural. Around here, we respect natural for real. Yeah. Pseudo Killer Official. Fighting pseudoisms. Smashing one pseudo at a time. Y'all know what it is, man. And with that, man, we out.